Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
Welcome to Hawthorn. I'm Julian Slowik, and tonight it'll be our pleasure to feed you.
The curtain rises.
Over the next few hours, you will ingest fat, salt, sugar, protein, bacteria, fungi, various plants and animals, and at times entire ecosystems. But I have to beg of you one thing. It's just one. Do not eat.
Is he serious?
Taste. Savor. Relish. Consider every morsel that you place inside your mouth. Be mindful, but do not eat. Our menu is too precious for that.
We interrupt this program to bring you...
All right, everybody, my name is Kevin.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Julie.
And we are the Real Movie Guys, and welcome back to another episode of The Real Review, the series where we review and discuss all your favorite movies. And on today's episode, we're taking a look at The Menu, directed by Mark Mylod and stars Ralph Fiennes, Anna Taylor-Joy, and Nicholas Hoult. A young group travels to a remote island to eat at an exclusive restaurant where the chef has prepared a lavish menu with some shocking surprises. Lord Voldemort is a scary chef, guys, I have to tell you. I never thought I would say that in a sentence, but The Menu is a very, very interesting movie. It's actually one of those movies I think that pertain to my kind of viewing experience where I go into something expecting one movie and get something completely different I didn't know I wanted. That's what The Menu was for me. I had no knowledge of what this movie was. I assumed it was a horror movie when I saw the trailer, that there was some kind of something funny going on, but not knowing exactly what it was. And what I got, I have to tell you, I really, really enjoyed this movie. It was a genuine surprise for me how much of a good time I had with it. Adam, what are some of your overall thoughts with this film?
I think that this type of movie is not for me.
Okay. All right, that's fair enough.
I
That's
don't
what we
know.
like to see on this channel.
I could see why other people would like it, but for me, it just kind of existed. Like,
Okay.
I watched it, and it was all right. I didn't hate it, but it was, I don't know, just kind of sat there for me.
It just kind of sat there. The dish was a little cold for you in
Yes,
the menu?
yes.
There's going to be a lot of that. I hope you're ready. All right. Julie, what did you think of this film?
I really enjoyed it, and I didn't think I would. I don't know who I talked to, but someone said, "Oh, like it's not as good as I thought it was going to be." So I just kind of had this like negative thought in my brain about it. And you put it on. I wasn't even planning on watching. I had papers out. I was starting to grade it, and then slowly I'm like putting them down, and then completely put the whole stack to the side and was watching the movie. And not a phenomenal movie by any means. Not that it's done anything new. Very similar when we talked about Glass Onion and Knives Out, and that eat the rich mentality. But I just thought it was an interesting play on the meal courses, and had some pretty solid performances. Ralph Fiennes always excellent. Lord Voldemort.
Yeah, Ralph Fiennes definitely steals the show, which we will talk a little bit about. The one thing about this movie, and I don't know if this is kind of like bold to say, but right now, this film might not seem like a big deal. I think down the line it will be. I think I'm going to say, may argue the fact that it might be a cult classic maybe down the line. I could see people coming back and discovering this movie after, quite a few years have passed, maybe like, let's say 5 or 6 years. Let's throw a random number out there. I could see that, right? I could see people coming back going, we didn't know how good we had it with that movie. That was something. I really wish that, we paid a little bit more closer attention to it, because it's fun to see how much satire and horror can work together in such a unique marriage that I don't think you get with many other movies. So Adam, what did something not work with you with that? Like, what exactly, if you could pick something out? I'm not trying to single you out, but I know we have the most divergent opinion. What about it did that something like that not work for you specifically?
Maybe it was the pacing of the movie.
Okay.
Maybe it was just, I don't know. I was expecting, maybe it was because of what I was expecting versus what I got.
Okay.
Um, It's not to say that I didn't enjoy some of the parts of the movie because I thought some of the elements were really cool
Right.
and very enjoyable to watch, but I don't know, it just didn't land with me. Maybe it's the type of satire it was.
Okay.
Um, but I
So
agree with you. I could see that it could easily become a cult classic. That's like exactly where I was going with my
and,
train of thought too.
yeah, and I want to start, and I'll usually don't do this, so I will start more in the negative territory. Even though I really did like this movie, I will start with what I think are some of the bigger weaknesses, and I think it's what Adam's actually pinpointing. So I'm actually really glad you're on that thought process for this movie. The tone is never really consistent in this movie, like it should be. If you were there's different ways you can do this, right? When you have a movie like this that attempts to start off as like a thriller, turn into a horror comedy towards like the end of the movie almost, that doesn't normally work when you're not consistent. And the fact is that this movie transitions too often back and forth between the two. There's points where it's very thrilling, where Ralph Fiennes is talking to the cast and he's, introducing the dishes of what's about to happen next. And then there's just kind of over the top satire and parody. And I think that that's where this movie kind of loses a lot of it can lose your audience, especially is with those parody satire elements. They're too corny, right? They're way over the top. This movie really wants to stick it to the critics, right? And the rich. That's what this movie is essentially about. It's like the worst of those kind of people that overindulge, people that critique, people that destroy any kind of art form. That's what this movie's trying to go for. And it's in those moments where every character is almost a satirical caricature of that archetype is where I think you lose people. Is that something that you could relate to, Adam, where it was just too over the top with some of those performances?
Yeah, I think that nails it right on the head. I enjoyed the introduction of each menu item. I enjoyed the stories that were accompanying each of them. But it's just as soon as it like shifts is where it lost me.
And it
And I
does
was
it
like
frequently.
back to that other stuff.
Yeah,
Yes.
and it does it very frequently. And I think if you kind of laid it out more one way and then transitioned solidly to another movie, and we've seen this done before. Julie, I know you're familiar with movies like Ready or Not are kind of examples of that, where it's thriller and then it kind of divulges itself into like more of a comedy horror kind of film. It's consistent with its tone from that point forward, and that this movie never really achieves that, right? It can't decide what it wants to be. Does it want to be a satire? Does it want to be just a thriller? It's kind of lost somewhere in translation. Would you agree with that, Julie, as far as that?
Definitely. And I think it has to do when you have such I guess actors of a higher caliber like Ralph Fiennes and Anna Taylor-Joy, even Nicholas Hoult to an extent. His character is more goofy. But I would say they're probably out of the whole cast, like, more serious, I guess. And then everyone else is just like a blatant caricature of whatever they're supposed to be.
Right.
So it's hard when you have such that discrepancy where it's, as opposed to having a cast of high performing people, you have that weird mix, and the deliveries aren't always there. Where you said, like a movie like Ready or Not, everyone's kind of on that same level. Maybe there's one or two standout performances, but everyone's kind of equal in that campy silliness, where you have two different tones and two different performances.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the problem, where there's two really strong actors in this movie. And I think the whole cast as an ensemble works, ultimately. I do enjoy everyone. I think everyone did a decent job for what it was. But really, this movie is Ralph Fiennes and Anna Taylor-Joy. Right, those are really the two characters this movie's about, and those are the ones that they want us to focus on. Everyone else would be dressing, if you would, in the menu. I know. I'm sorry. All right, it's not the last one though. It's not. But yeah, they're just dressing to the overall story, right? They're the ones that are going to carry the story, and it's their dynamic between them two, the scenes where they're confronting one another. That's where it's the most interesting, where Anna Taylor-Joy is not supposed to be there. Ralph Fiennes is kind of like unsure of her and what she represents. I think that's really cool, and I think they're excellent actors. Anna Taylor-Joy, relatively new to acting too. She's just really standout actress, and every time I see her, she keeps stealing the show for me. Seriously, I can't. I have to admit. And Ralph Fiennes, of course, a very seasoned actor, but I think that's what works. So, if I'm so negative with this movie, why do I think it's gonna have such an impact? And I think it really is some of that message that's being told in the story, more so than the Eat the Rich, because that's the blatant, obvious satire. Like I mentioned, I think the bigger thing is kind of like the director is almost speaking about like the dying of artistry in the industry of film. Movies are so expected, right? We know what's going to happen. We're given a certain thing, whether it's a Marvel movie or just a generic horror or comedy. You know, usually from the premise, within the first like 5 minutes or a quick recap, you know what's going to happen. This movie wasn't that, and it tried to elevate itself with art. And even though it also comments on that, I think, as well. There's a lot of ways you can interpret this movie, which is something I enjoy too, because you can also say just by being artsy doesn't make you necessarily artsy, because at the end of the day, this movie's kind of unoriginal. It kind of is, as much as it doesn't want to be. Once you find out what the twist is with Ralph Fiennes and his intentions, I've seen that before. You know, I've seen a revenge storyline against the world and stuff like that. It kind of feels lacking, and it's not as original as it wants to be. But I think that's kind of the point. Would you agree with maybe that assertion, Adam, that there's something there to that kind of theming with this movie?
100%.
100%.
100%.
What do you think? Do you think there's something credence to that? There's a lot of interpretations to what's happening in this movie. If you think of it
Absolutely.
beyond, not like, you know, like I said, you for one didn't per se enjoy it as much, but there's a lot of ways you can look at this movie. I think that's what's more fun about it.
Well, like I said, there's some elements in the movie that I really enjoyed. Like I enjoyed it turns out into some sort of a mystery at some point, and I like some of the dishes, how they start tying them into like the one dish with the tacos. I thought that was super cool. I loved that idea. I was like, that was really fun.
And the bread was another one I actually liked. And maybe
it's so funny.
That's something else that I think works. So you're right. It is satire. It's over the top, but it does kind of know it. Right, this movie knows what it's doing. I never felt like it was like, oh, we don't know what we necessarily want. It kind of knows when it's over the top, that it's purposely being over the top, which I really enjoy. The scene I'm talking about is when they bring out like the dress or the dipping for the bread, but they don't give them bread. Right, they're all rich people. So he says, here, you can have the dip, you know, the whatever for the bread, but you can't actually have the bread because you're not poor. Only poor people can understand what bread really tastes like. That's awesome. Like, yeah, it's stupid. It's kind of corny, but it's really fun. And it kind of leaves you guessing, like, what's really happening here? I think it adds to that mystery, I would say.
Yeah. I even like in that same scene, too, the food critic, they make note of, like, a broken emulsion as one of the dipping things. And then plop, here's another broken emulsion for you. Something that they think is just a whispered conversation doesn't fly in that kitchen. And then, you know, throughout the movie, when you don't think, oh, here's another bowl of broken emulsion, if you want to talk about it so much.
Yeah, and we've seen that before in a lot of movies too. I hate to make this comparison, but I guess I'm going to have to. When M. Night Shyamalan did Lady in the Water, that whole movie was a comparison to how he felt about critics criticizing his work and how he didn't agree with what they thought about everything he did. So he's pretty much like he's attacking the critic in the movie. And again, we've seen that before, and this movie, I think, does it maybe a little more elegantly than Mr. Shyamalan was able to do, because that movie's pretty terrible. There's another discussion for another day. But, yeah, I really like that in this movie, and I really think, not just that, I think visually this is a very beautiful movie. It's captured and shot extremely pleasant. I think a lot of the atmosphere is really caught with the right type of eye, right? Everything is framed correctly. A lot of symmetrical shots, especially with like the staff and Ralph Fiennes. The audio presentation when he claps his hands. I'm not going to do too loud on the microphone because I don't want people to go deaf. Those scenes are standout for me where he claps his hands, everyone stands to attention. And kind of the audience does too, because you're lulling yourself into almost a state of like, all right, we're having the meal, whatever's happening. Then he claps his hands and everything just stops. The movie just stops. Like, all right, you need to pay attention to what's going on. And I like that. And I think there's a lot of like great cues like this that make this movie stand out. I really, it's tough because I think there are some weaknesses to this movie, but I think a lot of the positives can outweigh that. Adam, were there any other maybe standout things to you that you think this movie did really well? Or was there anything actually really negative that you didn't like from this movie?
Give me a moment.
All right, we'll come back to you then. Julie, how about you? What do you got? Anything real positive you want to say, or negative, of course?
Negatives, it really would just be nitpicking. Like, and I think you kind of covered it. It's a story that's been done before in other ways. But I do want to say I did just like the overall theming and like the little touches, like Adam said, the tacos, and just seeing, an artist feeling unappreciated, where he pours his heart and soul into his craft. And a lot of people can feel that about other ways. And even there was one scene, and his characters I could care less about. It was like the older couple, and he's like, "You guys have been here like 6 times, and this is like for most people once in a lifetime experience." He goes, "Tell me one thing you ate the last time," and they couldn't. And just that idea of like people don't appreciate what the experiences they have in life, or not even appreciate the person who's providing those experiences.
Right.
So there's some interesting commentary. Again, has it been executed better elsewhere? Sure, but I enjoyed it.
And that's another theme I think you could even draw. It's about people working in the service industry and how they're mistreated and how they're unappreciated. For someone who's been in there, I can totally relate to that as well.
Yeah,
I can kind of see how that feels when people just treat you like you're nothing. Adam, anything on your reflection there?
Yeah, I agree with Julie. I really like that especially with the ending scene. I don't know if you want to go into the spoilers at all, but it kind of goes
let's
into.
go into it. Yeah, go ahead. What do you think of the ending? We'll set it up a little bit for kind of like what happens at the end there.
I mean, what I was gonna say is I just really like how it also caters to the simplistic things as well. And like there's beauty in these simplicities, and I really like that element too.
Right, because throughout the movie, Anna Taylor-Joy plays Margot. She's given a choice by Ralph Fiennes, like, which side are you on? Because she's not supposed to be there for this meal. All these people have been pretty much hand-selected by Ralph Fiennes as to be there for this. He's going to kill everyone, and it's going to be this big, upglorious ceremony that he's going to have. So he gives her a choice because she was pretty much an escort hired by Nicholas Hoult to be there with him and to compliment him and say how wonderful he is. And she also has ties to the senator that's there. There's a lot of intertwining wires, but ultimately Ralph Fiennes gives her a choice. And at first he says, "You're one of them, you belong with them," and he casts her aside. But she challenges him, and she's challenged him throughout the movie, which those are the most impactful scenes to me, is where she says, like, "This isn't that good," or "It's fine, this meal's fine." And at the end, she's having all this fancy food, and it comes back to the common man, right? Where she says, "I just want a really good burger." And Ralph Fiennes, we find out, Chef Slowik, that's where he got his start, working at a burger place, a burger joint, and he has like a whole little speech about that, how he used to make burgers, and I love that was my favorite job. And it brings him back to his art. So you wonder, again, with the commentary, if there is something there with like a director or a writer or anyone in an arts kind of industry, going back to the thing you love and seeing it bring joy to someone. She takes a bite of that burger and she's like, "This is a really good burger." And you see he just lets her go and she leaves. It's kind of corny, right? It is. It's kind of stupid. He's just like, "Oh, you enjoyed my burger. I'm going to let you live now. Have a good rest of your life." But at the same time, like Adam said, it's so simple, but seeing that there is maybe some hope for her and other people out there, that joy that it brings even him, just to have that little respite, because he's going to continue what he's going to do. He's got it all fleshed out. He's going to kill all these people, but it's that little spark that gave him a little piece of joy before he died. I think that's excellent.
Yeah, I do just love the whole burger idea of the whole movie. Like, even when she finds a photo of him and he was like employee of the month at that burger shop, and he's young and he's got this huge smile on his face. And then when you're looking at him now, where yes, he's creating masterpieces, of food, but he's not happy. And then being able to do that again is interesting. It almost, as you were talking about, it reminded me of The Bear, one of our favorite shows this year. That's an
excellent show. As
a chef, that's what you want to reach. You want to reach that 5-star dining, that unattainable where only the elite can go there. But when you go back to that, at-home burger joint or a sub shop,
it's like once you get there, was it worth it?
Right.
You're sacrificing your soul to get, and that's kind of what is also his commentary is like, I've sacrificed my soul to get here, and what has it got me? It's got me money and fame, but it's not really worth it. I'm not enjoying anything I'm doing. There's no substance. But yeah, I think this movie is really good. I think a lot of people will appreciate it over time. But I think we're at that point, though. Let's give our final scores. I'm going to give The Menu an 8 out of 10.
What happens inside this room is meaningless compared to what happens outside, in nature, in the soil and the water and the air. We are but a frightened nanosecond. Nature is timeless. Enjoy.
That's a cheery thought. Are you crying?
It's just I find it all very moving. It's all so beautiful. It's almost too beautiful to eat.
Again, this is a movie I think we're going to reflect on maybe more so years to come. It's not perfect, right? Most movies aren't, so that's not saying much, I don't think. But I think the performances, the story, the amount of themes you can go back and just really rewatch this film, there's a lot there, more so than first glance. And I think the more that we go and back and watch this movie, the deeper I think an audience will become enthralled with it. And also, I think the messaging is only going to get, unfortunately, with what it's trying to tell you, will get stronger over time with the way artistry is just in the world of film and any other, art that we look at. Adam, where do you stand with this film?
I am going to give the menu a 7 out of 10.
I don't like your food.
What did you say?
I said I don't like your food, and I would like to send it back.
It just didn't land well for me, but there were a lot of elements that I did like. I really enjoyed a lot of the setting. Like I said, I liked the food aspect of it. I thought that was very unique. It's just unfortunate that some beats didn't land with me.
Yeah, hey, it's not for everybody. Not every meal is for everybody. Sometimes it just comes in a little undercooked, right? All right. That's the last one. I promise. Julie, where do you stand with this film?
I'm going to give the menu a 7.5 out of 10.
Did you say no?
I said no, yes.
Okay. Wow. Okay. That'll be all, though. Thanks.
May I?
You don't have to do it. Okay.
You will eat less than you desire and more than you deserve. It's a pleasure to serve you.
Meeting kind of in the middle of your two scores. I really enjoyed it. Is it perfect? No. But I had a good time overall. It was enough to make me put away my papers and, really take notice.
Yeah, see, that's what Julie fully commits when we watch movies. That's how you know when she's reviewing a movie. If she's committed to it, you're going to see her on the show because it's something she wanted to talk about. But
yes.
Yeah, the menu, I want to see more movies like this. Just, again, I think horror is one of the more interesting genres that we've gotten nowadays, especially when they're kind of willing to try new things, especially when they blend with other genres like comedy, thriller, satire, stuff like that. It was a fun ride. I recommend it. It is streaming on HBO Max. But let us know what you guys thinking below. Did you think the menu came in a little too overpriced? Do you think, maybe there was something on the dollar menu that maybe would have been more for you? All right, Adam's going to kill me. Let's end this video. My name's Kevin. That guy's Adam. That's Julie. We are the Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. Au revoir.
Eat up.
Adios.
If you guys like what you've seen here today, consider giving this video a like and leaving your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to stay up to date with everything Real Movie Guys related, make sure to hit that subscribe button and check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And don't forget, all you audio listeners at home, we are available on many podcasting platforms. Just search The Real Movie Guys, you should pop right up. Thank you again all so much for joining us on this episode of The Real Review. We are The Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. Catch you next time.